We praise success, we chase it, we build entire lives around it. But here's the uncomfortable question. Success by whose definition? In today's capitalist world, success often looks like money, power, visibility, a LinkedIn profile that makes strangers clap. But what if the people who make it are also the most alienated, the most disconnected from themselves? What if, instead of reflecting inner growth, success is just a polished mask worn to hide how lost we've become? That's the paradox. Capitalism promises that if you work hard, you'll succeed, but it rarely asks what you become in the process. Marx called it alienation, when humans lose themselves in the very things they create. Fromm warned that we've replaced being with having, that we now value people not for who they are, but for what they produce. So today we're asking, what is the true cost of success? And more importantly, is it worth paying? Alienation from self, Marx and the mirror you avoid, approx 1,000 words. We live in a society where being successful often means being perpetually busy, constantly productive, and professionally exhausted. And for what? A title on your LinkedIn profile? A number in your bank account? The illusion of control? It's easy to laugh about, but it's harder to admit. Somewhere in the race to make it, most of us have quietly lost something. Ourselves. Karl Marx had a name for this condition long before it showed up in burnout memes and hustle culture hashtags. He called it alienation. Not the sci-fi kind. This was existential, deep, unsettling. Marx argued that under capitalism, workers become alienated in four crucial ways: from the product of their labor, from the labor process itself, from other people, and most painfully, from themselves. Sound dramatic? Let's take a look. Start with the product. In a capitalist system, most people don't make things that express who they are. They make things that someone else profits from. You spend hours pouring energy into something, only to hand it over. It's not yours. You don't even recognize yourself in it. Over time, this separation creates a strange feeling. You're producing, but it's not really you doing it. You're detached from the outcome, and that detachment doesn't stop at work. It seeps into your identity. Then there's the labor process. You don't get to decide how you work. You follow rules. You meet quotas. You optimize, systematize, perform. Creativity? That's extra. Autonomy? That's risky. In Marx's time, this meant repetitive, dehumanizing factory work. Today, it might look like mindless emails, corporate jargon, endless spreadsheets. Different setting, same principle. Your labor is designed not for expression, but for efficiency. And slowly, you become a cog in a machine, polished, replaceable, tired, and then alienation from others. When everyone is competing, there's little room for true connection. Your coworkers aren't comrades, they're benchmarks. If you win, they lose. If they shine, you're dimmer. So we smile politely and scroll silently, clapping for each other's promotions while secretly panicking about our own stagnation. Marx saw it before the algorithm did. Capitalism isolates us. Even in a crowd, you feel alone. But the final alienation, the most devastating, is from the self. When your life revolves around survival in a system that doesn't care who you are, you start to forget who you are. Your desires become shaped by marketing. Your values get distorted by metrics. Your time gets carved into billable hours. You stop asking questions like, what moves me? Or what do I love? Because those questions don't pay the bills. You become what the market needs you to be: productive, flexible, and silent. And then one day you pause. You look in the mirror. You see the resume, the wardrobe, the achievements. But beneath all that, a quiet emptiness. Not a failure, not depression, just disconnection. You don't hate your life, you just don't recognize it as yours. This is alienation, and it's not a glitch in the system, it's baked into it. Capitalism doesn't need you to be whole, it needs you to be useful. And if you burn out, there's someone else ready to replace you. If you struggle to find meaning in your work, that's a you problem, not a structural one. At least that's what the system says. But let's stop and ask, what if Marx wasn't just an old economist in a dusty library? What if he was describing something you've quietly felt all along? That eerie gap between what you do and who you are. That ache to be seen, not just evaluated. That desire to create, not just consume. The system says work hard and you'll be free. But Marx flips that. He says, you're not free when your work owns you. And for most people, work does. It dictates your schedule, your mood, your identity. It decides when you wake up, how much you're worth, and whether or not you get to rest. And if you dare to ask, is this all there is? You're called ungrateful. Marx wasn't naive. He didn't believe in some magical utopia where everyone plays guitar and bakes bread all day. But he did believe that humans are inherently creative, social, thinking beings, and that when our labor stops being an extension of ourselves, when it becomes just a means to survive, we suffer. Quietly, culturally, collectively. And it's not just factory workers or minimum wage employees. Even high-level professionals feel it. The doctor who spends more time on insurance paperwork than healing. The writer who churns out clickbait for ad revenue. The manager who attends meetings about meetings. Success doesn't protect you from alienation. Sometimes it magnifies it. Because alienation isn't just about having a bad job. It's about being trapped in a system that doesn't let you show up as a full human being, that treats your time like currency, that rewards efficiency over empathy, output over insight. And the saddest part, we're so used to it, we think it's normal. We call it adulting. We make jokes about selling our souls for a paycheck. We accept the idea that loving your job is unrealistic, an indulgence, not a right. But what if that resignation is part of the problem? What if our quiet acceptance is what keeps the alienation going? Marx didn't offer a step-by-step solution. He didn't write self-help books, but he gave us a powerful lens, a way to name the discomfort so many of us feel but can't quite explain. And sometimes naming the feeling is the first step toward healing it. So if you've ever looked around your life and wondered, why doesn't this feel like me? You're not broken. You're just waking up to the reality that the system doesn't really care about your selfhood. It cares about your productivity. And maybe the most radical thing you can do in a world of alienation is to remember yourself. Fromm and the shift from being to having, approx 1,000 words. Erich Fromm didn't yell. He didn't call for revolution. He simply pointed out something quietly terrifying. Somewhere along the way, we forgot how to be, and we started obsessing over what we have. It sounds harmless at first. Who doesn't want to have nice things? But Fromm wasn't talking about collecting souvenirs. He was talking about a deep psychological shift in modern life, one that turned identity into inventory. In his book To Have or To Be, Fromm described two modes of living. The having mode, where a person's value is measured by what they own, control, and accumulate, and the being mode, where value comes from experience, authenticity, presence. Capitalism, he argued, trains us to exist almost entirely in the having mode. We're taught to acquire degrees, jobs, followers, gadgets, even people, and to build our sense of self around those things. So when someone asks, "Who are you?" we rarely answer with something existential like a seeker or a compassionate being. We answer with titles. I'm a manager, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a homeowner. We identify with what we possess. And in that moment, our very selfhood becomes property. Fromm warned that this mode of living isn't just shallow, it's unstable. Because everything you have can be taken away. Your job, your status, your youth, your beauty. And when those things disappear, who are you then? In a having-based society, the loss of possessions isn't just economic, it's existential. You don't just lose things, you lose yourself. That's why we panic when we feel unproductive. That's why silence feels like failure. That's why rest feels like guilt. Because if you're not achieving, you're not having. And if you're not having, what are you even worth? It's no wonder people are anxious. If your identity depends on external metrics, your life becomes a never-ending performance. You work harder, you compete more, you try to have better things, better titles, better versions of yourself. You even try to have happiness, as if joy can be bought, stacked, or delivered in 2 business days. But happiness, like love, like freedom, belongs to the realm of being. It can only be lived, not owned. And yet capitalism doesn't run on being, it runs on having. You can't sell stillness, you can't monetize self-awareness, you can't scale contentment. So the market does what it does best. It turns everything into a product. Even personal growth, even spirituality. Meditation becomes a subscription. Authenticity becomes a brand. Healing becomes something you purchase. You're encouraged to work on yourself, but only in ways that are Instagrammable. Fromm saw this long before the age of algorithms. He believed that capitalism encourages what he called the marketing orientation. You stop being a person, and you become a package. You don't just sell a product, you are the product. You learn to present yourself in ways that are attractive, strategic, optimized. You become a collection of traits designed to appeal to others. And the result? You lose touch with who you are when no one is watching. Let's pause here. Think about how much of your daily life revolves around maintaining appearances. Updating, posting, refining, explaining. You don't just do things anymore, you perform them. You don't just experience joy, you document it. And over time, even your most personal moments become content. Not because you're fake, but because the system has trained you to exist for display. This is what Fromm feared, that we would become so caught up in the act of possessing, even our own personalities, that we'd forget how to inhabit them. That we'd spend so much time curating ourselves, that we'd forget to be ourselves. But the most insidious part? You don't realize it's happening, because the world congratulates you for it. When you get promoted, people cheer. When your house gets bigger, your followers do too. No one asks if you're actually happier. They ask, what's next? And so the cycle continues. Acquire, upgrade, repeat. All while the self, the unquantifiable, unmarketable self, grows quieter, smaller, dimmer. Fromm didn't offer easy answers, but he offered a path back. He said we must rediscover the art of being, not as a luxury but as a survival skill. Being means experiencing life directly, without needing to possess it. It means loving without owning, creating without selling, thinking without performing. It means cultivating presence, not productivity. Imagine a world where we measured value by depth of presence, not depth of pockets. Where a conversation was worth more than a contract. Where your worth wasn't calculated in numbers, but felt in relationships, in stillness, in how deeply you could live your own truth. It sounds idealistic, but it starts small. Choosing to rest without guilt. Speaking honestly, even when it's not strategic. Creating for the joy of it, not the likes. Letting yourself be bored. Letting yourself not be seen. Reclaiming the parts of you that don't serve a purpose, but make you you. Because here's the truth. Everything you can have can be taken from you. But who you are, your being, is something no system can own. And in a world that treats humans like assets, remembering that might just be the most radical act of all. The productivity trap. Success that exhausts you, 1,000 words. There's a strange belief floating around modern life, quiet, unspoken, but deeply embedded. It goes like this. If you're not constantly doing something, you're failing. And if you're not exhausted by what you're doing, are you even trying? Productivity has become more than a goal. It's a moral code, a badge of honor, a lifestyle, a trap. We don't just work anymore. We optimize. We hack our mornings. We schedule our breathing. We treat rest as a recovery strategy, not a right. We fill our calendars with things we don't enjoy, for goals we can't explain, just to stay in motion, because stillness feels like laziness. And laziness in this system is practically a sin. But who decided this was normal? Capitalism did what capitalism always does. It found a human instinct, our drive to create, build, improve, and turned it into a machine. A machine that never stops. A machine that tells you, if you're not improving, you're falling behind. You could always be doing more. Waking up earlier, reading faster, learning a new skill, starting a side hustle, branding your personality, building your future. If you don't, someone else will, and they'll get the job, the money, the success, the life you were too lazy to earn. So you push harder, you sleep less, you say yes when you mean no, you pretend you're fine until you're not. Welcome to the productivity trap. It doesn't ask, are you growing? It asks, are you producing? It doesn't value effort, it values output, and not just any output, visible output. Output that can be measured, compared, celebrated, work that shows up on charts, dashboards, or social media feeds. The quiet, invisible labor, listening, resting, grieving, wondering, is not only devalued, it's often erased. And the cruel irony? You start chasing success in a way that erases the very self you're supposedly improving. You hustle to be your best self, but you no longer know what that self even wants. You wake up early to work on your passion project, but it feels like another job. You meditate to become more focused, so you can work more efficiently. You take a walk to clear your mind, but only if it fits your productivity app's step goal. Everything becomes a tool for more work. But what are we actually building? A life that runs like a well-oiled machine, or a life that feels like it belongs to someone else? Marx called it alienation. Fromm called it the shift from being to having. We could call it burnout, but really it's just exhaustion disguised as ambition. You wake up tired, you work through lunch, you answer emails on weekends, and when someone asks how you're doing, you say, busy, like it's a compliment, because in this system, it is. Productivity has become the new virtue, and idleness, that's practically immoral. Never mind that some of history's greatest insights were born in boredom. Never mind that creativity requires pause, that wisdom takes time. In the age of hustle, rest looks suspicious. But here's the truth. This pace is not sustainable. And more importantly, it's not necessary. The idea that constant motion equals worth is a story told by systems that benefit when you never stop to question them. Your exhaustion is not a personal failure, it's a predictable outcome. And here's where it gets even more ironic. The more you optimize your life, the more life itself slips through your fingers. You schedule every minute and lose the magic of spontaneity. You track every habit and forget how it felt to do things just because you felt like it. You measure your time in tasks and forget to experience time at all. This isn't just about overwork, it's about identity. When your worth is tied to your productivity, rest feels like dying. You don't just fear slowing down, you fear disappearing. So what's the alternative? Do we quit our jobs and move into the forest? Not necessarily, but we can stop worshiping efficiency. We can start valuing depth over speed, meaning over output. We can remind ourselves that not everything needs to become content. Not every moment needs to be monetized. Not every action needs to be part of a plan. Some things, joy, love, curiosity, awe, are inherently unproductive, but they are what make a life feel worth living. Imagine redefining success not by how much you did today, but by how fully you were there while doing it. Not by what you achieved, but by how deeply you experienced it. Imagine building a life that doesn't exhaust you, but sustains you. Where progress doesn't mean running faster, but growing wiser. And yes, that means stepping off the treadmill, even just mentally. It means asking uncomfortable questions. What am I chasing? Who is it for? What would I do if I didn't have to perform it? It might feel radical, because in a productivity-obsessed culture, being human is radical. But maybe the most revolutionary thing you can do in a world that demands endless motion is to stop, to breathe, to reclaim your time, not for work, not for hustle, but for you. Because you are not a machine. You were never meant to be one. Success and the illusion of individualism, approximately 1,000 words. We love a good success story. The underdog who made it. The entrepreneur who started with nothing. The lone genius who changed the world from their garage. These stories are powerful, emotional, and in a capitalist society, they're everywhere. But let's be honest, they're also mostly myths. At least the part where it's all done alone. Capitalism thrives on the illusion of individualism. It tells you that you are entirely responsible for your success, that if you work hard enough, smart enough, long enough, you'll make it. And if you don't, that's on you. Not the system, not circumstance, just you. Convenient, isn't it? This narrative works well for capitalism. It makes failure a personal flaw, not a structural issue. And it makes success a solo badge of honor, not the result of countless invisible factors. Your education, someone taught you. Your job, someone hired you. Your ideas, built on the thoughts of others. Even your health, your opportunities, your access to time and space to create, none of it happens in a vacuum. But we rarely talk about that, because in a market-driven world, independence is marketable. Self-made is sexy. Dependence, interdependence, those sound weak, and yet every life, every single one, is a web of support, privilege, and often pure luck. But when you buy into the myth of individual success, you also buy into the myth of individual worth. If you win, it's all you. If you lose, that's on you too. So we don't just compete for money or status, we compete for identity. We measure ourselves against peers, strangers, influencers, even friends. Not because we're evil, but because we've been taught that being better is the same as being worthy. The result? A culture of comparison. Everyone chasing success, but not for its own sake, for the proof that we matter. We don't even want things anymore. We want to be seen having them. Because the illusion of individualism has a cruel twin, the illusion of visibility. You're told to build a brand, a profile, a personal narrative of triumph. But behind all that gloss is often loneliness. That's the great irony of the individualist ideal. It promises freedom and uniqueness, but often delivers isolation and insecurity. When success is all about you, failure becomes unbearable. You can't share it because then you're weak. You can't question it because then you're ungrateful. So people suffer silently, behind achievements, behind curated lives, behind "I'm doing great" smiles. But let's step back. Where did this story come from? Individualism wasn't born in a vacuum either. It evolved with capitalism. It became the perfect psychological match for a system that rewards self-interest and competition. If everyone believes they're on a solo path, they're less likely to question the system, less likely to unionize, less likely to ask who's getting left behind. You focus on your lane, your goals, your brand, and the world quietly fractures around you. Even success becomes suspiciously uniform. You're free to choose your own path, just make sure it leads to wealth, visibility, and productivity. You're encouraged to be different, but only in a way that sells. True individuality, the kind that questions systems, breaks molds, resists definitions, isn't rewarded, it's marginalized. So what looks like freedom often isn't. It's a curated version of selfhood, optimized for external approval. And while we're told to believe in ourselves, the truth is, we've outsourced most of our self-worth to other people's applause. But here's the real tragedy. When we worship the myth of the self-made person, we lose sight of the most human thing about us: our need for each other. We weren't built to go it alone. Collaboration, community, shared meaning, these aren't signs of weakness, they're signs of sanity. But we've replaced mutual support with competition. We admire the person at the top, never asking who helped them get there, or who they stepped over on the way. And that's where this illusion becomes dangerous. It doesn't just distort our view of others, it distorts our view of ourselves. We become reluctant to ask for help, ashamed of needing rest, afraid of vulnerability. Because somewhere along the way we internalize the lie that needing anything from others is a failure. But what if we reimagine success? Not as a solitary climb, but as a shared journey. What if we celebrated not just the one who made it, but the invisible network that helped them rise? The mentor, the friend, the community, the systems that should have supported them but often didn't. What if we stopped pretending that life is a race and started seeing it as a dance? This doesn't mean giving up ambition. It means grounding ambition in reality, in honesty, in humility. It means recognizing that our lives are shaped not just by effort, but by connection. That no matter how impressive your story sounds, it's never just yours. And maybe that's the start of a more human definition of success, one that makes space for interdependence, for gratitude, for shared growth, one that frees you from the exhausting burden of doing it all alone. Because you never did, you never had to, and you never should. The moral cost, what you trade to win, approx 1,000 words. We like to think of success as a clean reward. You work hard, you rise, simple, deserved, moral, but rarely do we ask what's been quietly traded in the process. Because success in capitalism often comes with a price tag you don't see until you've already paid it, and the currency isn't always money. Sometimes it's your time, sometimes your integrity, and more often than we'd like to admit, it's yourself. At first, the trade-off seems small. You stay a little late at work, you say yes to a project you don't believe in, you smile at someone who doesn't respect you, you keep quiet during a meeting, you frame your opinion in softer language to avoid conflict. It's all part of being professional. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin shaving off pieces of yourself. Not enough to notice at first, but over time, you start to feel it. The dull ache of self-betrayal. Because the system doesn't ask for your soul all at once, it asks for it in increments. A bit of silence here, a compromised value there, a missed dinner, a skipped boundary. You rationalize it. This is just how it works. Everyone does it, and that's true. Everyone does do it, because the system rewards you for it. The more adaptable you are, the more valuable you become. The more you bend, the higher you climb. Until one day, you realize you've built a version of success that looks great from the outside, but feels strangely hollow from within. Marx called this alienation. Fromm called it forgetting how to be. You could also call it the slow erosion of moral clarity. You start making choices not because they align with your principles, but because they align with your goals. And when goals outrun values, you might reach the finish line, but you won't like who you are when you get there. This moral cost isn't always dramatic. You don't have to be corrupt to be compromised. You just have to start living more for your reputation than for your reality. More for the brand than the person. More for recognition than truth. And that's where the danger lies. Because in a culture that prizes visibility, it's easy to mistake performance for character. To think that because you look good, you are good. But success isn't a moral indicator. Plenty of people climb the ladder while stepping on others. Plenty of people win by saying nothing when they should have spoken. And the system, it doesn't care. It rewards output. It doesn't audit your conscience. Which leads to another quiet trade, authenticity. You start speaking in rehearsed lines. You network instead of connecting. You market your values instead of living them. And slowly, being real feels risky. So you become a role, a polished version of yourself. Safe, pleasant, useful. But you know what's underneath. You know when you're faking it. You feel it every time you go along with something that doesn't sit right. Every time you stay silent to stay safe. Every time you win, but feel a little smaller doing it. Success in capitalism often means performing goodness, not practicing it. The system doesn't want your integrity. It wants your compliance. It wants your cooperation dressed in positivity. It wants you to critique gently, push softly, speak strategically. It wants you to look awake, without waking anyone else up. And when you try to live with integrity, really live it, you often find yourself punished. You're too intense, too idealistic, not a team player. Because integrity isn't efficient. It slows things down, it challenges comfort, it resists shortcuts, it makes people uncomfortable, and discomfort isn't profitable. So you either keep pushing back and risk being sidelined, or you compromise, a little here, a little there. And again, it doesn't feel like much, until one day, you don't recognize the person you had to become to win. The question isn't whether success is bad. The question is, what kind of success are we talking about? If success means abandoning your truth for approval, is it worth it? If success means climbing a ladder built on silence and sacrifice, is it even success, or just survival with better lighting? Imagine a version of success where you didn't have to trade parts of yourself, where your principles weren't obstacles but the foundation, where your conscience was an asset, not a liability, where winning didn't mean losing your voice. It's rare, but it's possible. And maybe that's the real revolution, not rejecting success but redefining it. Choosing depth over image, integrity over applause, wholeness over performance. Maybe the bravest thing you can do in a system that rewards compromise is to stay honest. And maybe, just maybe, the cost of being fully yourself is high, but the cost of not being yourself is even higher. Success shouldn't be a performance. It shouldn't cost your peace, your identity, or your ability to feel alive in your own skin. And yet, under capitalism, it often does. We're taught to climb higher, run faster, and accumulate more, without ever asking if the ladder leans against the right wall. Marx warned us about alienation. Fromm told us we'd forget how to be. And now we live in a world that celebrates overachievement but quietly mourns authenticity. But it doesn't have to stay this way. Maybe success isn't about impressing others, it's about returning to yourself. Maybe real wealth is time, purpose, connection. Maybe true success is doing work that doesn't betray your values and building a life that doesn't burn you out. In a society that measures you by your output, the most radical thing you can do is remember your worth isn't something you earn. It's something you are. If this message stirred something in you, don't just scroll past it. Share it. Leave a comment below. What have you traded for success? And was it worth it? Let's talk honestly about what it means to live well in a system that often asks too much. Subscribe for more thought-provoking videos on society, selfhood, and the quiet revolutions happening in our everyday choices. Because maybe the next chapter isn't about climbing higher, but waking up to what really matters. Let's redefine success together.